Same directions, different function. Why don't we type this one into calculator as well? Type it in Desmos if you like. Now, I'm going to warn you, based on what you saw on the last example, we are tempted to just graph things and say, okay, yeah, I've got this thing graphed and I can just plot these points. No, what we saw on that last example was that there was a hole in the graph. Desmos doesn't show holes very well. Rarely do they ever show a hole, and you got to know what you're looking for. So you still have to do some work. So let's plug in some points, second table, and I'm going to delete the things that are listed here, and we're going to plug in what they gave us, which is -10, -6, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and we'll stop there. We'll just plug those in, and when we do, we have 4.5, 5, 6, 8, undefined, 0 and 2 so far, so undefined. All right, let's keep going. Delete, 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 delete. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. When you plug in a 1, you get 2.6 repeating. I know you're like, oh, round it up to a 7. That's it, it rounded to a 7. 2.6 repeating. This one is undefined. And this one is 3.2, this one's 3.3 repeating, and this one's 3.5. Okay. This is going to be an interesting graph. Let's plot the points that we do have, and then we'll go from there. So -10, 4.5, if you want to graph it on a calculator or Desmos, feel free. -6, 5. -4, 6. -3, 8. -2, don't put anything there. -1, 0. 0, 2. 1, and then 2 and 2/3, so about right there. 2 doesn't exist. 3 is at 3.2. 4 is at 3.3 repeating, and then 6 is at 3.5. What in the world? How are we going to connect these things? All right, so I think we should graph it and see what we're really dealing with. So Desmos is clearer, but we're going to do, whoop, not that. Let's not do that. Let's go to a standard window. There's that. There's that. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So on the, excuse me, on the graph that we had right here, we had a situation where these things were curved and they were kind of hugging the X and Y axes. We have the same situation here, only they're not hugging the X and Y axes. I could draw a horizontal line right here and draw a horizontal line right here, and that brings us to some vocabulary. And that's going to be where I've told you we do not cross the X-axis, or we do not cross this, or we do not cross that. That's an asymptote. And so what we're going to do here is explore what we are not allowed to cross. I'm going to factor this one up here in the numerator. All right, 4x² minus x minus 2. And that denominator factors into x plus 2 and x minus 2. And we're going to keep factoring. So we have 4, and then x minus 2 and x plus 1. And that gives me x plus 2 and x minus 2. Now, I would like to think that you notice what I notice. Those are going to cancel. And so here's the situation. We are not allowed to divide by 0, and we would have divided by 0 at -2 and at +2. So the place where we would have divided by 0 at +2 really would give us 0 over 0. That is indeterminate. So x minus 2 over x minus 2, fantastic. But that's not going to work at x equals 2 because you'd have 0 over 0. And that is going to create undefined, but more specifically, it is indeterminate, and this is going to be a hole in my graph. So at 2, there's a hole, like somewhere around up in here, there's a hole. And so when I connect these dots, I'm going to be like, oh, look at that. Oh, there we go. Now, when we graphed this, we had a vertical asymptote, never crossed the y-axis. Vertical asymptote at x equals 0, which is the y-axis. In this situation, and I'm going to do this in purple. Where's purple? There you are, purple. We're going to have a situation where we never cross the line x equals -2. Right here. This purple is not part of this graph. It is not. You will never cross that line. So, hole here somewhere. Let's guesstimate the hole, and we're going to get more specific with that later. But the hole is here-ish. Maybe it's at 2, 3, and actually, let's see. I think it is. It is. Okay, the hole is at 2, 3. We're going to get into the specifics of how to find it later. What we're going to do is connect these. There's that. And we're going to do this. And just FYI, and we're going to get into the specifics later, you will never, ever cross the vertical line at -2. You're going to have a hole in your graph at +2. And you're also going to have a situation where you never actually cross the line y equals 4. Probably should have told you that before you graphed it, huh? There's your horizontal asymptote. How do you find that one? We're going to delve into that. But that 4 and that 4, not a coincidence. Okay, not always going to show up like that, but that's not a coincidence. We have 2 discontinuities. Let's talk about them. There is, and I'm going to start abbreviating here, we have a non-removable disco at x equals, okay, so you're driving down the road, what in the world just happened? You slipped into another dimension. That is non-removable. You can't fix that pothole. That's not a pothole. That happened at x equals -2. That would be this one right here. You have a removable disco at x equals, okay, +2. There it is. We could see it here because that's the factor that would cancel out.